Hi, everybody, and welcome to section 1.2. We're going to learn how to read certain problems, like word problems, and understand what their meanings are. So our objectives are we're going to convert verbal statements into mathematical statements, solving applications involving unknown numeric quantities, and solving applications involving geometric formulas. So let's get started and I'll explain as we go. This is really important for you to recognize is what is a key word. So for example, if I say something is 3 more than, well, I'm adding. If I want to total a certain numbers together, I'm adding. If I say sum, that also means addition. So these are some key words for addition. Okay. Subtraction, if I say that what's the difference between 7 and 2 or 2 and 7, you would say 5, right? Because difference means subtract. So we have difference, something is less than, or, sometimes you say minus. These are our keywords for subtraction. Multiplication, we have product and we have times, like 3 times 2, that's multiplication. If you see the word product, that means multiplication. And division is quotient. So quotient, anytime you see quotient, that means division. And per, like 10 miles per gallon, you could also say 20 miles per 2 gallons, right? So that's division. That would still be 10 miles per gallon. So per is a way to talk about division. One that's often overlooked is the word is, often means equal. I mean, it depends on how it's used, but in general, it means equals. There's one more that we can say multiplication. Sometimes we use of. So I'm not sure if it's being used in any of the problems that you'll see, but 2/3 of 8 means we multiply 2/3 times 8. So of sometimes also implies multiplication. All right, so let's begin. So rewrite each statement as an algebraic expression or equation. 7, I'm just going to highlight the important parts. More than, so more than means plus, right? So whatever we are going to do, we're going to add 7. And then the rest of it says 3 times a number. So the part that says a number is what we would call a variable. Like you can say it's X or Y or Z, anything you like. So 3 times a number plus 7 is the same as 7 is more than 3 times a number, right? So hopefully you can see that. Let me just say right from the start, I'm going to be doing these lectures. I also have office hours, which I'm happy to tutor during office hours. You're welcome to just stop in, ask me questions. You can hang out with me the whole entire time for office hours and do your homework. And if anything comes up that you don't understand, I'll be happy to help you. My office hours, I'll send an email and an announcement, but if you have any problem with anything I'm talking about, since I don't have a lot of feedback because I'm doing pre-recorded lectures. If you have any questions, please feel free to come to my office hours. Okay, here we go. 5 is less than twice a number. What do we do? Well, twice a number would be 2 times x. And 5 less than twice a number, remember, whatever that number is, you want 5 less. Now, this is where it's really important to make sure that you get the -5 in the right place, okay? It's not 5 minus 2 times a number. That's where some people mix it up because it's actually telling me first that I'm doing 5 less than twice a number. Okay, let's continue. 3 times the quotient of a number and 11. Now, what this is saying is 3 times the quotient of basically of a number and 11. So, well, maybe that's not exactly the right place to put the parentheses. So we're going to do the quotient of a number and 11. Okay, because let me see how to explain it. So the quotient of a number and 11, let's say that's x over 11, because fractions are the same as division. So this is the quotient of a number and 11. But then we're going to multiply this by 3. So we can write it like this, or we can also write this as 3x over 11. Whichever way you would like to write it is fine, but you have to read it carefully because we're multiplying the quotient of a number in 11 by 3, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. All right, rewrite each statement as an algebraic. We have more of the same. The sum of a number and 9 is 1 less than half of the number. Okay, so this has got a lot of things happening. So first thing I notice is this is here. So that tells me we're going to have an equal sign. And the sum means addition. So the sum of a number and 9. So the sum of a number and 9. And I'm just using x. Again, you can use any letter you like. Is, which means equals, 1 less than half of the number. So if whatever that number is, I'm going to divide it by 2. That gives me half. And I have to subtract 1 from that because 1 less than half of a number. So sum here is important. Less than is important. Half is important because we have to know that means divided by 2. So that's basically how that works. And then lastly, the product, what does that mean? It means multiplication of a number and 4. So we're going to multiply some number times 4, right? And then is, which means equals, and then more than, so it's 1 more than, which means I'm going to add 1 to something, right? 8 times the difference. This is where most people make mistakes. Where do we put these parentheses? Well, 8 times more than the difference of 10 and the number, okay? So difference means subtraction. Let's write down what it means. So 10, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to write it in green. That's okay. 10 minus x is 10, the difference between 10 and the number, whatever x was. But we want 8 times more than that. So it's 8 times 10 minus x plus 1. So you just have to figure out how to read it and how to break it down. So is a really good place to start because that separates one side of an equation with another side of an equation. And then whenever you see a number, just call it some letter. And so the product of a number and 4 is basically saying 4 times a number, which is 4x, okay? Is equals, and the second part I know is more confusing, but it's 8 times and then whatever the rest is. Hopefully that makes sense. So now we want to talk about how to solve problems. Basically, this is how to solve word problems, because word problems always are hard for people. First, just read the question until you understand it. Word problems are not really a story to read through because it's an interesting thing. This is not an English class where we're giving you interesting things to read and then you're writing something about them. This is every single sentence means something. You have to figure out how to figure out what that means. Okay. Once we understand the problem, then we're going to have a plan. Like, what are we going to do to carry out that plan? Maybe solve the equations, whatever they are. The last step is really important. The last step says look back. What that means is check your work, or at least look and see if that answer makes sense. Like if you're trying to find the area of a rectangle and you get a negative number, well, areas are not negative. So something went wrong. Let's say we want to find out I had this happen once in one of my classes where the problem stated you went out to dinner, the check with tip came to, let's say, $100, and you left a 15% tip. What was the price of the meal? And somebody answered something like $75. No, somebody answered something like $25 was the price of the meal, which if you go back and look, that doesn't make any sense. You wouldn't spend $25 on a meal and then spend $75 on a tip. So something went wrong. So why I'm telling you this is it's always important to go look first, see if the solution you got makes sense. And sometimes you can actually even check your work, but sometimes you can't. Well, you always can check your work. I guess I say you always can check your work. But first, always look and see if the solution that you get at least makes sense. I'm going to now read a more expanded view of what the last slide said. Step 1, read the problem several times until you have an understanding of what is being asked. So we said that. Then pick a variable that describes what the unknown value is that you're trying to find. So you can even, instead of writing X, let's say you were trying to find the price of an adult ticket. So you can write adult, or you can write A instead, adult and child, maybe A and C instead of X and Y. At least that way, the variable that you pick, when you find the answer, you know what that variable means. All other quantities must be written in terms of that variable. Write an equation using the given information and the variable. So step 2, we're actually trying to figure out what we're going to call that variable and the equation that we're going to write that's going to give us the information. Step 3 is probably not the hardest step. We want to solve the equation. Okay, so step 2 is probably the hardest of the steps. So we're going to solve the equation, and then, as I said, make sure that you have answered the question. That's also good, because sometimes they'll ask you for, like, let's say again, we had we'll see in our slides today that we're going to find something out about a basketball court. So they may ask you what the area of the basketball court is, or they may ask you what the length of the basketball court is. So even though you've done everything correctly, make sure you reread and see what the question is, and that you answer the actual question, okay? And then check to make sure that they make sense, which I've already talked about.